Hi, everyone. Are you caught in the revolving door of infections and treatments only to fall sick again? Well, today, Dr. Maggie is going to unveil the strategy to permanently close that door.
I'm actually really tired of seeing people going on this hamster wheel. And it really is a hamster wheel where people will identify an infection, they try to kill it, and it comes back over and over and over again. And today we're going to talk about how do we break this cycle once and for all. And I have a special guest to boot. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce Brandi, who we've been working with in the past year. Brandi, welcome.
Hello. I'm the
I
poster child, I really
You're
am.
Well, I mean, you're typical in a lot of ways of how someone presents at our door. I would love for you to give people a little bit about your background, who you are, when this started for you. Go for it, Brandy.
All right. Hey, everybody. I'm 45. I have a child who just turned 16, and most of my problems did start about 16 years ago, around the time she was born.
Stardom, hormones, everybody.
Absolutely.
Take note.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so my health went downhill. And for 10 years, I went to 5 naturopaths, dermatologists, GI doctors, all the things, no answers, and kept getting sicker. And about a year and a half ago, I found a naturopath who gave me some diagnoses and a place to start. But like you say, Maggie, everything she tested me for came back positive, which was strange. And so started the treatments, the aggressive medications, the supplements, the IVs, all the things you named. And I just kept getting sicker and sicker and sicker.
Brady, I want to hear
Yeah.
about that. You
Mhm.
said you went downhill and you got sicker and sicker. Specifically, what were you up against? What kind of symptoms?
Well, it started with rapid weight loss. I'm already a small person, but I lost like 15 pounds.
Mm.
You know, as a nursing mother, I was no longer able to make milk for my child. I started having skin sensitivity reactions, a lot of like unexplainable rashes, debilitating stomach pain, like true story, many iterations to ER, contrast dye injections, sonograms, ultrasounds. Guess what? I was always told, we didn't find anything, you're fine. And I would get sent away. And so that was really frustrating. And that was the path I was on for a good 10 years of fatigue, brain fog, chronic pain, hormonal issues, and no answers.
So you said you about a year ago, I think this is about 2 years ago, you finally found a naturopath. I mean, you had been working with conventional doctors up to that point and being told everything was fine.
Mhm.
15 years, 13 years of this. And then
Yeah.
2 years ago, you finally saw a naturopathic provider and you were diagnosed with a slew of things. What were some of the infections or things you were diagnosed with? Hi, I'm Maggie UMD, and I'm a functional and holistic medicine physician and the creator of the Transform and Transform Protocol. If you're interested in learning what are the root causes of all chronic disease, go ahead and click the link in the description where I have a power pack 30-minute training that goes over what are the 5 pillars of Transform. Go ahead, click the link, and I'll see you in that training. What were some of the infections or things you were diagnosed with?
Lyme disease with Bartonella co-infection,
Right?
reactivated Epstein Barr virus,
Hmm.
HHV6, which is another herpes type virus,
Hmm.
recurring SIBO, and she diagnosed me with Hashimoto's. It was the first person who tested my antibodies, so we did discover Hashimoto's there as
And
well.
so an autoimmune disease to boot on top of that.
Yes.
So it's an interesting thing is because I think Brandy, your story highlights sometimes diagnostic difficulties, which means that, you go to your regular doctors all these years, get diagnosed with nothing, and you're getting worse and worse. Yet sometimes you'll go to a naturopath or functional medicine clinic or a doctor and you get diagnosed with 10 things.
Mhm.
And I want to highlight this as there's some diagnostic problems.
It's a double-edged sword because after, 10 plus years of seeking and being sick and trying to heal my body, having someone hand me some diagnoses actually felt like validation and relief. So then
Right?
you think, finally, I know where to look. I know what to do and how to treat. Because to be honest, before this naturopath who went down this path with me, I had been offered a hysterectomy twice by 2 different gynecologists because that was their solution for
Let's
my reproductive health issues.
get the
So at
organ.
least this person was gonna allow me to keep my, reproductive health organs, and she was gonna look somewhere else. And so in a way I was relieved. And then a year into it, the relief turned to overwhelm, anxiety, fear, despair, thinking, "Oh my gosh," because it cost me, I paid out of pocket for this naturopath for all the tests, for all the appointments, for all the supplements and medications, over $10,000 in a year.
Yeah.
So that did add up quickly
To
So
stay sick.
to stay sick.
how did you do as you went through those 7, different types of infections, the getting treated?
Well, my body did not handle it well, right? I couldn't even detox all the things I was killing.
Big problem.
And even trying to support with like liposomal glutathione or IV glutathione, none of the things that we were doing that were supposed to help inflammation, help infection, help detoxification, they just weren't effective. I was getting even, vitamins and nutrients by IV, by injection,
Yeah.
but I was still fatigued, I was still brain fogged, I was still having pain, and I was still sick. And it was crazy. I was like, how can I be doing all of these things for my body and my body is not responding? I understand now, a year and a half later, after starting the program, why? Because you're right. The environment wasn't changing. My
Mhm.
detoxification pathways were wrecked. My adrenals were shot. My thyroid was dysregulated and my immune system was not working for me. It just absolutely wasn't. And I shared this earlier in a pod is that after a while, it gets dark. My thoughts go, you go to a dark place. You either start feeling like I'm never going to feel well, I'm never going to heal. You're expecting worst case scenario diagnoses coming down the pike, or you just feel like this isn't living and I don't want to live anymore. And that is really how dark it got for me. And for people who know me, that might surprise them to hear that, but that is where I was.
I'm sorry you were in that place, Brandi, but I know, and thank you for sharing that because I know you're not alone. A lot of people probably feel that exact same way as they're struggling with these chronic health issues, specifically infection, that can be so frustrating.
I want to tie a couple things that Brandi said together. Think about this for a second. There are pieces in her story that to me is a pattern I see over and over again. Her problem started postpartum right after the birth of her daughter. And that was 15, 16 years ago. So it's interesting because I talk about how times a big hormone change really makes us really vulnerable to any sort of infection, autoimmune or immune changes, and inflammatory changes and infectious changes. These are what I call hormonally vulnerable times.
Yeah, my body, like I had an emergency C-section. I want to point this out. I had an abdominal surgery for my labor and delivery. No one ever talked to me about the importance of how to support my GI going forward
Mhm.
after an abdominal surgery.
It's
And so
insane.
that's something else that is so wild to me that only after coming into the program did Dr. Maggie talk about supplementing with, digestive enzymes and probiotics and, getting that dysbiosis corrected. And that's 16 years after an abdominal surgery. She was the first person that ever talked to me about that. That is just wild to me.
I'm curious, Brandi, using yourself as an example, what did you discover about your digestion through the program?
I discovered that I absolutely need digest it in order to. So let me just say, everything I was eating that's how it felt. I felt like everything I was eating prior to the program was causing a reaction. I was convinced that I was allergic to food, like a lot of people do. I had food fear, food trauma. I had eliminated gluten, dairy, soy, FODMAPs, histamines. I don't eat meat, so what the hell is left? Very little.
No wonder you lost
Right.
15 pounds, lady.
Yes, and I was having like, itching, crawling sensations, rash. So I was like,
Histamine reactions.
right. And so turns out it wasn't food. Turns out it was digestion. I needed stomach acid. I needed ox bile. I learned later, fast forward, that I genetically make low elastase. So we know that my pancreas wasn't working for me either. But these are the pieces I got to put together. And probiotics. When I started taking Digest It and probiotics, I came into this program, chronic constipation, distended stomach, pain, bloating, gas, all of it. I was given prescription medication for constipation that did nothing. 6 days into starting the program, drinking water, starting supplementing my digestion, everything changed. Suddenly I was having regular bowel movements again. I no longer felt toxic. I was no longer itching. It was too
That's
simple.
great.
It was
And
too
that's-
simple.
I mean, you were dealing with this for over a decade, and then in a
Yes.
week, it turned around.
Yeah, within 6 days, I was having like bowel movements again. And within, excuse me, a few weeks, my stomach issues just relinquished. It was unexpected because it seemed like too simple after everything I had done, right? But
Mhm.
that's what was needed.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, I think it's logical. And yet it's not the logical order with which we deal with infection. I mean, she goes through $10,000 in how many rounds of trying to kill 7 organisms, yet nobody's educating her and addressing
Mhm.
digestion with her, which is the defense against more and more infectious organisms coming in. Doesn't
Right.
it make sense to actually protect your front door?
Yes. Now it does. Right, Anne?
Angie just said, same here, no constipation within a week of starting the program. Elaine jumps in and says, digested helped my digestion's issues so much. In a way, it's like it's almost too simple. But the
Mhm.
fact is that you don't have to take my word for it. Like you gotta take a look at the results that people have with this. I find that digestion is the holy grail that nobody knows about, including your doctors.
And so I went to a GI doctor. We did stool testing once upon a time,
Oh,
and they found fat in my stool. I had lost 15 pounds. My stools were floating. And guess what they told me? We just found a little fat in your stool. You're good. They gave me no indication of why I would have fat in my stool,
why the
why my
hell would
stool
you
would
have
be
fat in your
floating,
stool unless
and
you
nothing
couldn't
to do
digest
about
it?
it. Right.
I
It's
can
like,
relate to that as well, Brandy, because I had expensive testing done, so many different tests I felt like to try to diagnose whether it was your nutrients being evaluated or your stool being evaluated. And each time it would have some information in there, but I felt like my practitioner was just like, it's not that bad, like
mhm.
it'll be okay. We'll just, stay the course. But yet the course wasn't working and we weren't doing anything to interrupt that cycle.
Agreed. So what did you do? What did you discover about your good bacteria in your gut, Brandy?
My bacteria was imbalanced and my fermentation was crap. I also learned that the immune system in my gut wasn't working for me. I mean, actually, every step of my digestion that we tested in your programs came back to say, no bueno, no
Yeah,
good,
yeah,
not working for me. And so I definitely needed to support the diversity in my gut and the balance of bacteria in my gut. And you found additional pathogens that we hadn't found before. I had strep that
yeah.
was seeding into my gut from my oral cavity, which I didn't know about. So I wasn't taking care of that issue that was creating. I would fight the SIBO, but things were coming back because I hadn't addressed the root cause.
Mhm.
Oral. Like, think about this,
Mhm.
everybody. So here's the other thing is like, she could be sitting here dealing with Lyme, Candida, multiple Epstein Barr, all these other infections, right? Or SIBO as well. But the problem is like a lot of times on these stool tests, the practitioners, functional practitioners ignore some of these other flora. They're actually ear, nose, throat, and dental that continue to seed the problem. I haven't met a single naturopathic functional medicine doctor that's actually addressing those.
And I
So
did have chronic sinus issues before I came into the program, and since I've been doing the chewable probiotic, my sinuses are so much better. I had constant postnasal drip, drainage, runny nose, all of those things. So not only do I know I'm, helping with the oral microbiome and the seeding of the gut, but my sinuses have been so much better since being on that probiotic as well. And I took out a lot of things from my diet that would have been supporting my digestion because I was avoiding high histamine foods. And so I was taking away ferments and things like that were actually beneficial, but I was afraid to have them because of the reactions I was having. And you know what? All of those things have come back. I can have all of those things again. I never needed to take them out to begin with.
well, let's talk about that. Based on your food mapping, Brandy, most people assume you're gonna have to eliminate a shit ton more food. So, what really happened with you?
One thing,
This one. What was
literally onions,
Onions.
And you
onions.
was that something you ever would have suspected?
No, and I love onions and I was having them every day. But it was the only thing that came back, and it was not something I expected because onions are antimicrobial and they're so good for you. And so, of course, I was having lots of onion and garlic in my diet. Plus, I'm Southern. So, of course, I am. Right. But one thing, y'all, one thing.
One thing, y'all, and she was on what FODMAP hell for how long?
And I was eating I felt like I was eating like 5 foods when I came into the program. I was afraid to eat everything. Just eating caused problems, and so it didn't matter what I was eating, it was just eating itself that was the issue because my digestion was so broken. But I thought it was every food that I somehow, you know what I'm saying? Like,
What?
that's not a rational way, that's not rational, but that's where I was.
Here's a question. Once you went through the food mapping system and you got your data, what were you mostly doing? You went from 5 foods, where are you at now with the number of foods?
Everything but onions. You know what I mean? It was exciting because I love food. I'm a foodie. It just shuts down your life so much to have to avoid food, avoid dining out, avoid socializing around food.
Mhm.
And you also can feel like somewhat of a burden. And I know that you all understand this, or like, you have all these accommodations and needs. And so you're not so fun, right?
Mhm.
And so it really opened up a lot of things. It wasn't even just about being able to eat, it was about my social life, it was about my work life, it was
Yeah.
about having meals with my family. Like all of that changed when I understood that I didn't need to be afraid of eating anymore, that I could actually enjoy eating and enjoy eating socially again.
Well, I want to bring back to what is the social cost of having these infections, these chronic symptoms for like the past 15, 16 years of your life?
Mhm.
So we didn't
Yeah.
even talk about that. How did that impact upon your job, schooling, family
Mhm.
life, you as your own view of you as a person?
Well, I'll try not to get emotional, but I left, it was the fall of 2019 because it was right before the pandemic. I studied public health. I worked in community health. I was a community health worker at a local nonprofit. I was the program coordinator working with folks experiencing extreme homelessness and poverty. I was very passionate about my job. I loved what I was doing. I was making an impact on the world. And I got so sick that I had to leave school and I had to leave that job. And then the pandemic happened. And so that gave me a little bit of a buffer, but it was devastating. It was devastating because my identity was wrapped up in my job and my schooling. That was who I was. And I had purpose with that job and with what I was doing. And I felt like I lost my identity. I lost my purpose. I felt like, I wasn't doing anything that mattered anymore. And on top of that, I felt like a burden to my family, like a financial burden and just a burden because I could not, I did have to withdraw. I did have to isolate. I had to turn down invites. I wasn't going out. I wasn't going out to shows. I love music. I love to see live music and bands. I'm not going to parties and shows. I'm not going out for meals. I had quit drinking years ago, so I wasn't going out to drink anyway, but like my life really changed. My bubble got very small and it was very lonely. And you want to talk about dark? That's where that darkness comes in, right? Like there was not much of a life left at that point.
And Brandi, what was it specifically about why you were feeling so sick that caused you to leave the job? It was specifically the fatigue.
I had such severe brain fog, I couldn't do simple math anymore. I couldn't even recall words. I couldn't remember people's names. I was the coordinator. I was supposed to orchestrate what was happening at my job, and I could not do simple math anymore. I was laying in my office in a fetal position many times with debilitating stomach pain. Like I was calling out of work a lot. I was not able to go into work. I could not get off the sofa, get out of bed.
Mhm.
It was the fatigue, the pain, it was the brain fog, it was everything.
It's really
Question.
Yeah.
devastating.
Where are you now?
Uh, well, let's see. Well, I'm back to work.
Yay.
I have 2 jobs now. Coming into the program actually created an opportunity for me to go back to work in my field, working in health, which is, for those of you who don't know, Maggie asked me to work for Transform. And so for the last 10 months, I've not only continued to work and, go back to school and get straight A's, I got my brain back, but I actually had an opportunity come my way because of my participation in the program, and that has been a huge gift.
Yeah, and you are currently a pod leader, leading a lot of the participants through our program. That's why so many people in the chat are like, "Hi, Brandi." Lois just said Brandi is an amazing pod leader. So you're currently working 2 jobs, number 1.
And I'm
Number
back at school,
You're back at school in your master's of public health.
and I have been going to shows and sing live music with my daughter, with my partner. I think I've gone to 3 shows already this summer, and I have something else coming up later this week that I'm taking my daughter to. So, like, I'm going out, I'm living life, I'm joyful.
Yeah.
A total turnaround. What do you think you would say to some of these practitioners that you worked with in the past that caused you so much frustration knowing what you know now?
Thank you,
Mhm.
because everything they did led me to where I am today.
Yep, I agree with that. I do think that when you're looking at conventional doctors, it's not like they're purposely trying to do
Mhm.
harm,
Yeah.
right? But they don't know what they don't know. And one of the things I really love about our programs is we're here to educate you. To me, honestly, I mean, to be 10, 20, 30 times smarter than anybody you'll ever work with. And interestingly, too, is Brandi it has worked and is working with naturopathic physicians. One of the things that I'm really proud of is also educating our people in our programs on how to find natural or functional medicine doctors that you can work with to collaborate with you. How do you actually join or invite in educated collaborative conversations so that they can work with you? And how do you identify that, right? Chris just said, Anne Marie just said, such a gift to get your brain back. I was going to say, Brandi, I remember you a year ago on one of your first calls.
Yeah, probably was not not pretty.
What was it like, Dr. Maggie? Just you could tell that she was searching and searching for the right
Well,
word.
most people entered the program with
Yeah.
extreme amount of brain fog, fatigue, right?
I
Right?
had anxiety, I cried a lot. I
Yep.
remember crying a lot. It was
Mhm,
emotional.
mhm,
It was hard. It was hard to be vulnerable,
mhm.
and yeah, that was
So
not a place I wanted to be.
I love it. And in summary, a couple things, everybody. Number one, we talked about how important it was for digestion. I'm just looking at my notes here. There was so much that we went through. Digestion, huge, right? Number two, probiotics and how important
Mhm.
probiotics and the role of the microbiome is. Number three, how important actually accurate food mapping is through the food mapping system was for Brandy to reintroduce and add back a whole lot of foods, right?
Mhm.
One thing we didn't touch a lot on that I'm just going to touch right here is that we did start out talking about how hormone changes was the triggering event in Brandy's life. So I'm curious, Brandy, what hormone patterns did you discover about yourself?
Well, I had low everything and stage 2 going into stage 3 adrenal fatigue. So I pretty much had stopped making hormones, which at, 44 when I came into the program was unacceptable, and it was no wonder I was feeling so tired.
I'm going to let you guys know that we call the adrenals the postmenopausal ovary. It still should continue to make hormones, many hormones, even if you've had a total hysterectomy.
Mm.
And in Brandy's case, she didn't have a total hysterectomy.
But I almost did, Maggie. That's what's crazy. You know what saved me from having my hysterectomy?
What?
The pandemic, because they pushed back procedures. It
Wow.
gave me time to figure things out and find you, but I was that close. And just think about that, because that was what I was told by conventional doctors who wouldn't test my hormones, that that was the answer. That was the only option they offered me. And I'm so happy that it worked out the way that it did, because I didn't want that. And
Well,
I
and
didn't believe that was what I needed.
there's so many other people out there who don't have that same experience and who do end up getting
Mhm.
their organs removed and then
Mhm.
have to then deal with the consequences that may come of that as
Uh,
well.
so here's the thing. I mean, here's an unintended, like we did the "Where are you now, Brandy?" But here's the thing is, she avoided a hysterectomy or a total hysterectomy that was completely medically unnecessary.
Yeah.
And how many people out there have had a hysterectomy or a total hysterectomy and have not only did it not resolve all the symptoms, but new symptoms and new problems came as a result of it afterwards, right? Type that into chat. So these are preventable problems. And it just goes to show you that we're using Brandy's case study here as an example of what we see people coming into who are interested in learning about me, the program, and our programs all the time, right? This is very typical. Brandy is not a super special rare zebra. This is literally an experience of every man, every woman that we talk to out there in one way or another. But what I'm really proud of is we've tied these pieces together. The bottom line here is this, is that you got to stop cutting the tail off the lizard over and over again. It's going to come back over and over again. There are key issues that you need to deal with. That's actually the head and body of the lizard that you got to deal with. These are the root causes. They include digestion. Oh, we didn't even talk about blood sugar. They include digestion, hormone imbalance, the role of the gut microbiome, the role of food mapping to either eliminate allergens or reintroduce a whole lot of food. So, I mean, this is huge. If you're interested in learning more about our programs, we have a variety of different programs depending on what's going on with you. So, what I would do is there's a link here to book a chat with our team. We got to learn about you and what's going on so we can customize and tailor something that's personally right for you.
Brandy, I just want to say, and you've received so much love in the chat from people who know you and from people who don't, but we're also happy that you're doing better. We thank you for sharing your journey and your story. And I'm sorry that it took you 15 years to finally get the answers that you needed and the guidance that you needed and the education that you needed. But you got it. and
And I'm
you're
grateful for it.
completely turned around. So thank you for being generous and sharing your story.
Thank you all
Thanks,
for inviting me.
Thanks, y'all. Have a wonderful night. Hi, and thank you for watching this video. If you're interested in actively looking for a solution to your problem and you'd like to work with us, I'm going to invite you to go ahead and click the link in the description to book a chat with our team. What that's going to do is it's going to bring you to a calendar, pick a time that's going to suit your needs best. It's going to be about a 15-minute phone call. After you book that call, there's going to be a link to a short questionnaire, and that's really important for you to fill out because it's for us to get to know you better and helps us to better prepare to make the most of our time together. After you fill out the short application, it's going to take you to a page where there's a couple resources. What I want you to do is go ahead and click 2 of those and watch those 2 trainings. They're going to really best prepare you for your phone call with us to make the best use of our time together. I and my team look forward to talking to you to learn more about you, to see if we are indeed a good fit to work together. Thank you.